You as
Jump
well.
in.
Hi, everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this month's edition of Coffee with a Local Leader. This month, we're doing it with a bit of a twist and inviting Dr. Angel McCullough from the Greater Philadelphia region of ACHE. We're super excited to expand our network through this. We'll handle things a bit differently this time. If you're familiar with this setup, we're usually running about a half an hour, but this time we're going to be about 45 minutes. The first half an hour will be our typical chat with Dr. Angel McCullough. And then the last 15 minutes we'll dedicate to myself and Dan Vanderquast, who is also on the call today from the Greater Philadelphia region as we discuss ACHE's Leadership Mentoring Network. So without further ado, we'll get started. Dr. Angel McCullough is an experienced nursing executive with both clinical and operational leadership in acute care and home care. Angel has held leadership positions in some of the most complex organizations in and around the city of Philadelphia, with her current role of being Chief Nursing Officer of Trinity Health System, Mid-Atlantic region, covering Nazareth Hospital and St. Mary Medical Center. Angel received her DNP from Walden University in May 2022 and holds an MBA from Eastern University. She is a dual certified leader holding certifications as a nursing executive advanced through the American Nurses Credentialing Center and recently gained fellowship status through the American College of Healthcare Executives in 2024. Her passion for mentoring and diversifying healthcare professions inspired her to open a nurse aide training school, Quality Caring Professionals. Her commitment to training students to not only have technical proficiency, but also to have a relational proficiency. She has spoken on many stages locally and nationally. So we thank you, Angel, for donating your time to us this afternoon. And I guess a virtual round of applause for recently obtaining your FACHE. That's a great accomplishment.
Thank you.
So we'll start off by asking a few questions here from me, but definitely want to open the chat up to anyone. If you have questions for Dr. McCullough, please put in the chat or please raise your hand. We'll be happy to call on you. But we'll start out with a pretty basic question. Dr. McCullough, what inspired you to enter healthcare? I think we're all aware that healthcare is not the easiest profession to join in. So why don't you tell us a little bit what inspired you to join the field?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, happy Friday, everyone. If you're like me, I feel like the distance between Monday and Friday gets longer and longer as the weeks come. So happy to be here on a Friday. And in terms of answering your question, when I think, and I actually just was speaking to some nursing students about this, I think the first time that I really thought about becoming a nurse was in fifth grade when there was a career day at school, and noticed that there were lots of people kind of trickling in the classroom with different outfits on. We had a fireman who came in with his fire gear on. We had a police officer. We had a lady with a business suit on with a briefcase. We had a gentleman with the business suit on. We had a person in scrubs, and then we had another lady who also was in business clothes. And so I was like, oh, that's the doctor or the nurse. And that's the, trying to kind of pick it out. That's the teacher. And the one lady got up and she spoke, and she, talked about the fact that she was a healthcare professional and she was a nurse and had been a nurse. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. She's got a skirt and stockings and heels and a briefcase. Nurses are supposed to look like this. They're supposed to be in scrubs. And she just talked about the fact that she became a nurse and she started off in the scrubs and decided to go on to do sales, pharmaceutical sales, and that's what she was currently doing. And she just talked about all of the diversity in nursing, particularly. But then she went on to say that she worked with doctors, pharmacists, and that there's a whole team of people who come together to support patients. And I was like, I don't, and if those are people who knew me personally know I don't like to be in a box. I don't like to say you're supposed to look like that or act like that or be there. So the fact that nurses could be in scrubs one day and be in a business suit the next day, and be in scrubs the very next day was interesting to me. And so I think that was kind of like my first instinct as to me wanting to go into healthcare. My background, I'm a nurse. I'll always be a nurse. But really, I think every point in my career really just thought about wanting to do something at a higher level, right? Noticing challenges in the nursing profession and wanting to sit at a table that could actually do something about the challenges that I was experiencing, that my colleagues were experiencing. And so that was what inspired me to go into leadership in nursing. And so that's kind of how I got here today.
Great. Thank you for that. You kind of alluded to my next question here. Why did you make the choice to enter leadership, and what barriers did you face coming from a strictly nursing background, and how did you get over those?
Again, I really think that, one of my colleagues that I worked with as a nurse in the ICU is on the line. But I think, oftentimes when you're out there and you're on the front line and you're practicing, so much, right? We would see all of the challenges firsthand, right? And we would almost always have like an idea in our minds of what could fix it, but the translation of what we were feeling and doing and what we thought solutions could be always got lost in the leadership, right? Because they were over there and it was them and it was the leaders who didn't understand us, and there was such a gap. And so I just thought, I wanted to be a part of the team that was fixing the stuff that we were seeing, right? Because we were seeing these things. And so for much of my particular journey, I worked as a staff nurse while throughout my entire leadership journey. So as a manager, I was also a staff nurse part-time. As a director of nursing, I was a staff nurse at a different health system. And so I never forgot what it felt like to be on the other end. And then it gave me an ability to kind of close the gap, because I could speak the lingo of the staff nurses. So when I went to my team, I was talking to them, connecting with them on the level of, I know what you're feeling. And it just was, I was like, there doesn't have to be such a gap. And so I just wanted to always keep that connection going, even at higher levels. And wanted to be, kind of saw myself as a chief nursing officer who understood, who could also put on a pair of scrubs and understood what it was like to take care of a patient and, churn through your day and, but then also understand at the bedside that there were some components of business that needed to happen. And, contrast, I think about my journey with ACHE, and I'm sure you'll ask some questions about that, but even how to communicate with other members of the healthcare team, right? Like as a nurse, we could speak at the nurse in the hospital, outside of the hospital, at lunch. They always say healthcare professionals have kind of like a sick sense of humor, because you could talk the lingo at any time. But it wasn't as easy to talk to a pharmacist or, to talk to someone from finance and to articulate exactly what it was that we were feeling. So really just wanting to learn how to communicate what was happening at the bedside to the people who can make the change.
Yeah, I think I see something in the chat, Jennifer. I love that, because often sometimes leaders don't have the same level of insight because they aren't doing the boots on the ground work. Completely agree. I think sometimes in my organization, I've started to see that more clinical individuals taking on leadership roles. And you mentioned the CNO putting on the scrubs and then going on the floor. The CNO at my facility today, during our morning huddle, she had scrubs on. She usually does about once every week. So it's awesome to see that she hasn't lost touch with the floor side. She goes down and does rounds pretty regularly. So it's awesome that you hinted towards that as well. You mentioned joining ACHE. What benefits did ACHE provide you, and where did you find value in ACHE?
I actually had an opportunity to attend an event sponsored through the Philadelphia chapter, or the HLNDV, and I got to meet members from ACHE who talked about it. And I didn't really know. Well, I thought American College of Healthcare Executives, coming from the nursing, although I was a nursing executive, I wondered if that there was a place for me. I'm a part of many professional organizations in nursing, the National Black Nurses Association, the ANCC, all of the nursing organizations. And then I wondered, what does this organization provide something for me? And it was at that talk that I went to that I realized that there was, again, something to be said about the CEO that's speaking. I thought, wow, if I could be able to like sit in a room and talk and give an elevator speech to him not being a part of my organization, I wonder if he could give me some feedback around how I could maybe tackle something at my own organization. For me, it was really all about expanding myself and helping me to have more strategy around, to be completely transparent, around getting things done, right? Like if I, as a nurse, I want to push forward an initiative, or I didn't really have the words to say to translate to our finance leaders, to our other executives. And so I was purposely looking to seek out mentorship outside of nursing. I wanted to partner with a healthcare executive that was not a nurse, and intentionally. And I joined ACHE, and Ellen, who's on the line, thank you, give you a shout out. Ellen, I quickly joined ACG and became a part of the mentor mentee community. And Ellen connected me with an awesome mentor. He was a pharmacist by background, but a VP. And he gave me those tips, right? He's like, listen, the story is really important. The what's happening at the bedside is super uber important. And the finance leader, he wants to know the story through the books. He wants to know the story through the numbers. He needs a connection to your work, to the finances, right? Because that's the lens through which he's looking at it. And so he kind of gave me a lot of tactical tips and strategies on how to communicate what it was I was, what picture I was trying to paint, how to really change for my audience. And so just, avoiding groupthink, typically people of the same profession think similarly. We have the same set of, I always tell my kids, it's like having the same prescription. Like if you put on glasses with the exact same prescription, you're going to see the exact same thing. But if I put on, your brother's glasses and his prescriptions is slightly different, I may see things bigger here and smaller here. And so that's what I think ACHE gives you, the opportunity to really tackle the same problems, right? Crack the same nut, but through a different vantage point, which actually adds strategy to you as a leader, gives you a more diverse perspective, and then gives you a better opportunity to really communicate your needs.
I see Jennifer put in the chat, you mentioned HLNDV. It was the Healthcare Leadership Network of Delaware Valley. We changed our name to ACHE of Greater Philadelphia. Those in India are familiar with the rebranding. We used to be called IHIN, Indiana Healthcare Executive Networks, and have recently rebranded as ACHE of Indiana. So thank you for throwing that in chat. One other question before I'm opening it up to the group. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat or raise your hand. But I wanted to ask, off the ACHE conversation, what was your driving force for obtaining the FACHE certification? It's one thing to join ACHE and be involved, but it's another to take that next step and evolve yourself and obtain the FACHE. Can you speak a little bit to what was your driving force and how it's benefited you?
I think once I found value in the organization, in ACHE, and all of the things that I had access to as a member, it made sense to get the credential, right? It kind of goes back to my fundamental core beliefs and core values around education, and wanting to role model for my nurses. It's just, for me, it was similar to working in critical care for 20 years, and then the decision to become a certified critical care nurse, right? You're walking the walk, you're doing all the things. You need to have the credential behind your name. And so I also felt like obtaining the fellowship status gave me it put rigor around, and a timeline around getting things done, right? Expanding myself, and attending conferences and doing all the things that we oftentimes want to do in our workday, but we're like, oh, I can't go to that conference because I've got 6 meetings this week aligned. Or so it really gave me a finite timeline to get things done. And I think it just made sense. I found value in the organization, so it made sense to get the credential and also go on to fellowship status. And I will say that it was one of the best decisions ever. It puts you at tables simply because of the caliber of professionals that are usually within the organization. It puts you at tables with a multitude of different specialists and different healthcare professionals that you wouldn't normally be in without it. So definitely a great decision for me.
And congrats again for recently obtaining that. And that's It's a heavy lift, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Before I ask more questions, really do want to offer a chance up to the group to ask Dr. McCullough any questions that they may have. So please feel free to come off mute or throw something in the chat. Might have a shy group today, but no worries. I have more questions ready for you. um, so this group here that we do for Indiana, this Coffee with a Local Leader series, I think you and I have talked about a little bit, is more directed to young professionals, and we're happy to open it up for others as well, especially as we cross state lines. But as an executive, what is one of the biggest pieces of advice that you would give a young professional who's just either they're still in school, getting ready to graduate, or have just recently graduated and still trying to find their footing in the healthcare field? What's one piece of advice that you would give?
I would say to continue to be a part of the solution. As you're going through your career, you're going to find things that, there are opportunities to do things better, differently, or things that frustrate you in your work. But continue to think big and challenge yourself to also consider the solution. I think that people tend to get to burn out a little bit because they feel helpless and overwhelmed by the disappointment and or the frustration. And I chose to channel that frustration in being a part of the change. Like I wanted to sit at the table to make the decision, on the number of patients a nurse could have. And I wanted to sit at the table around, how we care for families at the end of life. And so I think just continue to want to be a part of the solution is the advice that I would give. And always surround yourself with diverse thought. Don't get sucked into the group think that can happen if when you kind of surround yourself with the people who you're most comfortable with. Sometimes you got to stretch yourself and be a little uncomfortable to grow.
Thank you for that. We do have some questions in the chat. I'll just start off on who put in first. So Elena Smith asked, what do you wish you would have known 5 to 10 years ago about your career in building your personal?
I apologize. My dog is the mailman just dropped off mail. I would say, what do I wish I had known 5 years ago? That leadership in any, whether it's nursing, whether it's business, is not for the weak hearted. Regardless of, you could do all of the things, you will never make everyone happy. You need to kind of be grounded in your purpose and your mission and stay true to that. I think I started off thinking that as long as I was a good leader, people would follow me and I wouldn't, get a lot of pushback. And I think that one of the things that you should just expect is to be challenged. And, it's your job as a leader to try to figure out how to translate the message and have it be received in a way that everybody can digest it. So I would say, I wish I'd known up front that leadership was definitely going to be challenging, especially from the leadership of people aspect. And I wouldn't have beat myself up in the earlier years around so much pushback.
Thank you. Jack asks, do you have any advice for young professionals as they navigate any career change, whether that is a minor change in the same specialty or just a larger scale change overall?
I think that if you are, I think that people should follow their passion. I think that, particularly when you're young, because when you get older, it becomes a little bit more difficult because you're kind of set in life. But I think people always end up finding their way back to their true north, and people who get stuck in a position that they're not happy at, always wondering about that thing that they really wanted to do but never went for, you end up with regret. And oftentimes I find people who always end up circling back around to it. I had a nurse that I knew recently at a job who actually went back to medical school in her 40s because she wanted to be a doctor. And so she kind of talked herself out of it, and then she decided to do that. So I would say follow your true north if it's your passion. And if you're thinking about it usually more than once or twice, it is a passion of yours. You should follow your heart and do it, especially when you're young.
Robin asks, did you have a mentor or a person that was preparing you for the CNO role within your organization?
That's a good question. I some along the path of my leadership journey, I did work for someone who thought, who kind of set me down and said, this is how you should be looking at your brand and your portfolio and your scope. But I think recently, I didn't have anyone at my organization who was grooming me for the role, which is why I really would apply some strategy around developing myself. So I joined professional organizations. That was my way of seeking mentorship. One, because I wanted to be able to be vulnerable and learn, and very clearly articulate all the things I didn't know. Right, like so. Sometimes when you're in your own organization and you're following a mentor, you may be a little reluctant to share all of the things that you don't know. So I wanted to talk to people who have been in other organizations outside of mine, and how they were tackling the same challenges. And what I found is that it's the same. We're all solving for the same X, right? But we're just solving it from the perspective of our organization. Um, and then by the time I got around to joining ACHE, I was specifically looking for someone outside of nursing who could help groom me for the CNO role. So my last mentor, the one that I spoke of through the ACHE, he kind of first thing he asked me was what my goals were. And I said was to get to that next level. And so he helped me in other CNOs that he had worked with, how the best ones that he had worked with, let me express to you how this person was with me, how this person articulated and communicated with the teams. And so I would say he was probably the most profound mentor to get me into the role that I'm in now.
Great, thank you. I think something that I took from what you just said there was expanding, whether it be through ACHE or other professional networks, is that you wanted to get outside of your inner circle. And I think that's something that me and Dan are probably going to touch on here later in this call when we talk about the ACHE Leadership Mentoring Network. So really can resonate with that and appreciate you sharing that. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I might build off what you just mentioned before. How important is it to build a network?
It is very important to build a network. I can't stress that enough. Healthcare in general it's a community, but again, it's a community of people who are oftentimes tackling the same problems. And having a network of people to bounce things off of and kind of get new ideas from is always good. I just read a quote. I was reading an article, and the quote was, "If you're the smartest person in a room, then you need to find another room." And I feel like that's what a network provides you, right? It provides a room of endless brains, ideas, wits, knowledge, expertise it allows you to kind of bounce things off of a network of people who you value their opinion, you value their credentials, what they're bringing to the conversation. And so I think it's super important. Oftentimes people reinvent the wheel or spin their wheels because they don't have a network of people to kind of pose a question or bounce an idea off of.
Thank you for that. You mentioned earlier too about one of the benefits of having a network and expanding your circle per se was to see, whether it be an executive leader or someone else in a different region, geographic region, to see like it's still fighting the same battles. You're still solving for the same issue, but to think about how other people solve it. So along the lines with that, how do you stay on top of current trends in the industry and like for obstacles such as those, how do you approach those? So kind of a 2-for-1 there.
I would want to get me personally. I am constantly going to conferences. I am reading the literature, the latest literature out in the latest journals. I am very strategic and intentional about that. I actually dedicate time every quarter to make sure I'm going to a conference. I'm keeping myself abreast, and that's because I know that these challenges, healthcare is hard, and eventually somebody's going to solve the problem. And so I want to be a part of the first wave of people who discover that solution through keeping myself open. And I would, if I could give a plug to anybody on the call, it's to really be intentional about seeking new and innovative ways to approach things. Oftentimes we don't kind of reach out, go to conferences, kind of leverage the people around us from different areas of the world who may have mastered it or may have figured it out or do it a little bit differently than us. So that's really how I keep myself grounded, is really planning it, creating the structure for myself to get out and see what's happening, what's the latest and greatest. And even if it's, let's say I know we're all looking at, reimbursement right now. We're also kind of coming off of our COVID, kind of trying to stabilize financially. But, I may go to a conference on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how, what's the next step with that work. So it doesn't have to be a conference that's about a particular solution, but oftentimes I get a lot from conferences that have absolutely nothing to do with the problem that I'm trying to solve for.
Great, thank you. Oh, I see Elena threw another question in the chat. How do you discuss ACHE with other nurses so that they see value in membership?
Oftentimes, I will share the journal articles and share the discussions with other nurses, particularly nursing leaders, to show them that, the issues or the conversations that are happening at, tables at ACHE. When I was a nurse, I didn't know if I belonged there or if I belonged with the nursing group, right? The organization of nursing leaders. And when they see that, hey, that was a topic at our last board meeting, or that was a topic at our conference, when they see that we're talking about the same issues, and they see that what I am bringing back from some of these talks and conferences and webinars is the perspective that all of us around the table that are nurses didn't have, right? We didn't have that vantage point from a pharmacy, from a teamwork perspective, or the value of, achieving magnet designation, or something that really is typically, centered around one discipline. There's so much value add from a pharmacist saying, here's how I think you could collaborate with us better. Or here's how, you could enhance our workflow. And so I think that they see that there is a thin line, right? There's not this divide, this huge gap between the other executives and then nursing and then physicians, that we're all intermingled at the same table, probably solving the problems a lot faster than we would if we were all doing it in silos.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. And Elena, I'm glad you asked this question because this was on my notes to round this up too. If there is a time, can you tell us I'm sorry, I'm misreading this question. Can you tell us about a time that has shaped you professionally?
A time that shaped me professionally. I will take it all the way back to my very first manager job. I was, again, still working as a manager and a staff nurse. I was a manager of one health system and a staff nurse as another. And I remember as a manager getting my budget, my supply budget, and looking through, and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize Foley kit cost this much. I didn't realize a Band-Aid, a pack of gauze cost this much. Wow, this is super expensive, right? Like, I, as a nurse practicing at the bedside, never considered a cost. I bought 2 Foley kits in the room. If, one didn't have something, I threw that one away. Never thought about cost, except that moment when I looked through this budget sheet and I was like, oh my gosh, this. And then I thought, like, why didn't anybody ever tell us that this stuff costs so much? Like, so then I went back to work as an ICU nurse, and now I'm watching the way that I utilize supplies is a lot different, right? And it's all subliminal. I now know how much these things cost. I'm being extra careful around how many packs of gauze I take in the room, being extra careful around my Foley insertion kit, and making sure I don't waste it. And I thought, why, this is information that like all nurses should have, because we are actually the ones that can control the cost, right? The managers who are looking at their budgets and seeing that supplies cost a lot of money and my staff, my team's using a lot, oh my gosh, are not the people who can actually do anything about controlling how much we're using, right? It's the nurses. And so, but for me being in those dual roles at that moment, I would never have, as a staff nurse, adapted my practice. So then I went and I started to ask other nurses if they knew how much things cost. Hey, do you know how much this costs? And they're like, no. Nobody's ever, and so that was a aha for me. I went back to my team and I made a copy of our entire supply budget and I gave it to everybody at the staff meeting. And from then on, everyone who touches these supplies will know what they cost. And, it may not impact their practice, but it may. And, I just feel like oftentimes we keep information to ourselves because, like, the manager's supposed to worry about the budget and the nurses are supposed to worry about the people. But I think that everybody having the same information, how I care for the people impacts the budget, and it all goes hand in hand. And so that was kind of really kind of like the light bulb going off and me saying I need to be a manager or a leader who communicates everything that I know my team should know, and then articulating the why this is important is because look at the costs, and we can't embellish our break room and get our new Keurig because we spent all of this money on supplies. And so the why and the what's in it for me is if we can fix some of these things, we can do more for our nurses and for our unit. And so I've taken that one principle with me throughout all of the different levels of nursing, and I still do the same thing today.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much for that answer. And we really appreciate your time today and answering these questions. I know personally I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better in preparation for this. But really appreciate your insight and feedback and willing to cross state lines and join Indiana's Coffee with a Local Leader series.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Uh, Now we'll shift gears a little bit this last few minutes. One of the things that was requested in this was, so I was connected with Dr. McCullough through Mr. Dan Vanderkwas, who's on the call right now, through the ACHE's National Leadership Mentoring Network. So we wanted to take a few minutes today and talk about the benefits of this and why we joined this network. I see that Elena threw a link in the chat. Thank you, Elena. If you wanted to dive into more specifics about the Leadership Mentoring Network that ACHE provides. So I'm going to provide some of the reasons why I joined it and why I applied to the network. And I think Dan's going to share his reasonings why too. And then we'll shift to some of the things we've done together. But if you have any questions, again, please feel free to come off mute, raise your hand, throw something in the chat. I think between the two of us, we'll be able to answer your questions. And if you're a part of the Leadership Network, please share your experiences too. So a reason why I joined the Leadership Mentoring Network was kind of some of the reasons Dr. McCullough shared earlier, was I wanted to expand my network. Indiana has a great ACHE network, but it's pretty centralized in Indianapolis. Every once in a while, you'll be able to connect with some people outside of Indy. But I felt like there was a really high concentration of individuals who were very participative, but they were in Indianapolis only. And I wanted to expand my network beyond the reach of just Indianapolis and Indiana. So that was one of the main factors why I joined the Leadership Mentoring Network. I didn't know that I was going to get paired up with Dan in Philadelphia. It very well could have been someone in one state over Ohio or somewhere else in Indiana. But I was really thankful that I was able to be paired up with Dan in Philadelphia. So one of the reasons, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So how we got paired up was that when applying for this, you go through and you fill out a questionnaire and you say why you want to join this network, and et cetera. So I had shared with ACHE during the application that I just felt like I needed a little bit more outside of the reach of my current ACHE local chapter. Nothing wrong with it. I just wanted to expand my network a little bit. And so Dan and I also had shared interests such as orthopedics, and a little bit others. But one of the four tenets that we work on, for me at least, and why I wanted to join this network was to get different perspective on how these are four main things that I work with my local mentor and Dan too. Is how do I cultivate a professional confidence? I think that sometimes we can all get a little timid when we're in front of executives or presenting a new idea, especially as a young exec or a young professional. So I wanted to grow my professional confidence. I wanted to work on clarity of long-term goals. I know when you're young, you're starting out. There's a breadth of opportunity that you can chase down. But I really wanted to work on how can I narrow down those long-term goals that I have, and then how can I prepare myself to achieve those goals. Another thing was I wanted to enhance my executive visibility. So kind of with that, cultivating a professional confidence. I'm pretty fortunate enough that I have the opportunity to be around executives quite often. Just because I'm around them does not mean that I get my ideas heard or that I get to talk to them. So I wanted to work on ways that I could get my name out there rather than just showing face in meetings. And the last tenet that me and Dan focus on is just improved professional networking. And so I think Dan and I could speak to this a little bit later. But one of these professional networking things was, coming together two separate local organizations, and having this coffee with a local leader, with an executive from a different area than my own. So those are some of the reasons why I joined and some of the things that we work on. But I'll leave it up to Dan here as the mentor side of this leader or this network, and explain why he joined and some of the reasons behind that.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Dr. McCullough. This has been a wonderful event. So yeah, it's an interesting question though about most, at least I'll take for myself. So you go into a program like this, starting off as a mentee, and then you start to think to yourself, okay, is there going to be a time that I'm going to flip over to maybe being a mentor? So there's kind of maybe an aha moment, maybe, or I can't give you an exact time that it would be for a global reason why you would go from mentee to mentor, but I'll tell a little bit of myself personally. So I've been a mentee for local chapters, some through the schools, and just absorbing and getting all the benefits of being a mentee. And I'm thinking to myself, when is it time that maybe I can pay it forward? And one of the things that I noticed as I started to gain more experience through my career and through life and professional career is that you start to gain a lot of more experience, but there can be some flaws that come with that, which I've noticed within myself, is that when you start to gain more experience, I felt myself personally talking more than listening. And they say kind of there's a rule, not a hard rule, but a rule about leadership that's that talk to listen ratio, right? You want to listen about 80% of the time, talk 20% of the time to be a really good leader. I could not follow that rule if my life depended on it. As I started to progress more and more, you just want to share as much as your knowledge as possible. So gaining all this information, simultaneously being a mentee in different programs, even with the ACHE and with schools, I started looking into the ACHE National Mentorship Program, and I love the way that it was structured. They tell you about that. This is going to be a mentee-driven program. This is going to be something that the mentee drives on, it controls the communication based on the topics, based on the frequency. They're setting you up. This is where you are, as the leader, as the mentor, is going to have to be responsible for about 20%, while the mentee is responsible for 80%. So I was like, wow, what a perfect time. Because as this time I started noticing this in my career, self-reflecting on my own annual reviews, I'm noticing, okay, yeah, I do need to kind of get back to that switch. So I don't know how the algorithm was put together, but I think the match that was made for Adam and myself was perfect. Adam was exactly what I needed as a mentor. So again, this is a win-win situation. You go into being a mentor, not for your own personal gains. You do get into it because you want to give back and you want to share, but there's also sometimes a little bit for yourself. And one of those goals of myself was how to get comfortable into that 80-20%, 80% listen, 20% talk relationship that you can carry over into work onto a professional level. And I think the way that we've been in this partnership for over 3 months now, and Adam's been exactly what I needed for that for myself. And again, what I can be able to provide him, I think it's just been a great win-win. And for all of those that are on the call that think, okay, I'm going to stick locally because it just seems like the algorithm's going to be more realistic, that they're going to match somebody. How are they going to match somebody from Indiana and Philadelphia and have that? But like I can reiterate again, they absolutely nailed it. So I'm grateful for this. And Adam, you've been great as a mentee. And I recommend that everybody to definitely get, yes, Adam mentioned he's on a local. I also have a mentee on a local from the local chapter, but please venture out and get onto the national level of the program because they really do a great job. So that's really all I've got. Appreciate it. Adam, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. I should know better by now. I think what you said there is perfect, right? It's been great for me. You said it's been great for you, so I appreciate those words. Just echoing Dan, I think that if you are, you're looking for a mentor or you don't feel comfortable, if you have reasons for why you don't want someone local, I think the ACHE Leadership Mentoring Network is a great program for this. Just before this, I was looking at some of the stats. I'm able to see how many people have applied and how many mentors. That mentor relationship, I strongly encourage you to apply for the program. I'm fairly confident you'll get matched. Or if you're just looking to be on the mentor side, it's Dan could probably speak to it better than I, but you can apply, get a great match, and work on a project with your mentee. That's something Dan and I outlined in our first meet. It was that it's great to talk about the things that I want to accomplish and our goals for this mentor and mentee relationship. But I think we both agreed that while through this, there's also a good project that we can work on. This was the project we wanted to work on. We wanted to collaborate between the two local chapters and open up, networking opportunity, not only for the greater Philadelphia area, but for the Indiana chapter as well. So strongly encourage it. I don't think they'll lead you in the wrong direction.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Elena, thank you for the question. So do you encourage others in your chapter to apply for being a mentor? If so, can you share any selling points beyond feeling to the point where, beyond feeling to the point where you want to give back? Yeah. So I believe that we're not all perfect leaders. And for myself, I realized that I'll reiterate with that talking to listening ratio. As we start to gain more experience, sometimes there can be almost like a regression that can occur based on who you are. Now, again, I might be more of a type A personality and get into that versus somebody that might not, maybe somebody more of an introvert than an extrovert. So we all know, I believe my selling point is we all know that we have things that we can work on. And I think, Dr. McCullough even said it. If you think you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room. I think that's almost perfect into this situation too. It's a great almost selling point too. This mentorship program is going to force you into another room. You go into another room and you can learn more and work on it. And part of that algorithm that we were talking about, it's not a hard questions to ask that they ask you to fill out, but they definitely is vital and they take it seriously. And they're going to ask you questions as a leader, what you believe you can improve on and things. And then also not only that, but other things that you can offer. So it's not only just that there is a bit of a give and take relationship, which is expected. You should absolutely want to be involved. You don't want to go into this program as just how can I benefit myself? It's not just a take, but there's a give component to it also. And I believe that's what the mentee should know too. And I believe Adam knew that too, that it's not just a take. He offered advice to myself. There's a learning experience involved because we can keep growing continuously. So that would be kind of my selling point if I had a couple minutes to do it.
Thanks, Dan. Well, we are at time. I know time is the one thing that not everyone has the benefit of. So do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but really appreciate Dr. McCullough, you coming in and giving your time and your thoughts. Dan, appreciate you as always. Everyone on the call, thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to future collaboration, and we thank the local chapter of Greater Philadelphia and Indiana coming together in this, this one spinoff of, the Coffee with a Local Leader. I think it's been really great.
Thank you guys for having me.
Adam, thank you for putting this together. A Greater Indiana chapter, thanks for having us. This is great. It's wonderful. And Dr. McCullough, thank you for speaking.
Of course.
All right. Everyone, I hope you have a good rest of your day and a great weekend. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.